Let's talk about the rest of college football. It's a really interesting and cool show tonight, guys. Having such a good time. The sport delivered for us again. The sport found a way from the jump, really, with Missouri getting stomped out by Texas A&M. We did that segment a little bit earlier in the day. Won't spend too much time there. We'll talk about them in the rankings later on in the show. Talked about Vanderbilt, the Commodores, the Doors, the Railroad running through Bama. We did that segment. You should go watch it, man. I have fun on that one, too. Also gives me an opportunity every time Vanderbilt does something like this to talk about Opportunity Vanderbilt, which is why I have turned my entire attention to that when we talk about Vanderbilt. I would talk the most noise about Vanderbilt because they offended me. They offended me by the way they played football. I could not take that program seriously. And then they beat Virginia Tech. They beat a Power 5 team for the first time in years. And then I'm going to the Vanderbilt Hustler because I believe that when something unprecedented, or should we say surprising, happens on campus, the student newspaper always does the best job of covering it the day of and the day after. So the Vanderbilt Hustler had the story. So I got to learn about folks that believe Vanderbilt's football school. This is Virginia Tech, right? They damn sure believe they're a football school now. But over there on the rail, because I'm there, I get to find out about Opportunity Vanderbilt. Opportunity Vanderbilt is a program that allows for students whose families make less than $150,000 to still attend Vanderbilt tuition free. They get donations to foot the bill. 53% of their donors are Vanderbilt alumni. It is not a cheap school. It is a very difficult school to get into, and it's a difficult school to graduate. One of my best friends, her brother went to Vanderbilt. He has that thought about it. But because they beat Virginia Tech, and now because they upset the number one team in college football, hey, y'all, I get to tell you about Opportunity Vanderbilt. And that's what college football does for universities. That's what football does for the university. When they talk about the front porch of the university, talking about the marketing officer, the CEO of the front, that's the football program. Because when you do something miraculous in college football, we give a damn about the rest of the university. That's how this works. There's no chicken or the egg argument here. Have a winning football team, the university benefits. That is why universities continue to throw money at college football. And then you get your television contracts, then you get to rise up. You get to get your Alexander Hamilton on. You know what I'm saying? Vanderbilt wasn't going to miss their shot. They said, this is the thing you dream about. This is why you coach. This is why you play. So that the number one team in the country comes to your house and you send them on their way back to Tuscaloosa with a pat on the behind. How now, and I see you at church tomorrow. That's what you get to do. My goodness. So we did that segment. And I'll be goodness. It was a whole hell of a lot of fun. And I encourage you to go check it out. The thing we didn't do, though, that we need to do now, let's talk about Michigan and USC. All right, so going into this week, we were all, for the most part, looking toward next week, and we will look toward next week a little bit further on. But we were looking toward next week because this slate of football games did not feel great. I'm thinking that Alabama's going to run roughshod over Vanderbilt. I'm thinking that Missouri is going to sneak by Texas A&M. I'm thinking that Michigan is going to find a way to beat a Washington program without a quarterback. And Washington said, nope. That magic trick stops here, okay? That magic trick stops right here, right now. And when they try to start Alex Orji and go well, finally we get to see Jack Tuttle. But not even Jack Tuttle can save Michigan from the beat 'em down that they got from Washington. Washington, a program that lost the Apple Cup to Wazoo, who got stomped out by Boise State. Okay? I don't mean to impugn Boise State except to say it ain't a Big Ten team. Okay? Think about it this way. Indiana is a better football team than Michigan right damn now. The defending national champions are looking up at Indiana right now. I would be shocked to see Michigan ranked in the top 25 tomorrow. Tell you what, they're not going to be ranked in the top 25 on RJ's top 25. We'll talk about that, dog. But it was also a second loss for a program that could not afford a second loss. Not right now. Your losses are to Texas, USC, not USC. They beat USC. Texas and Washington, 2 teams that played in the college football playoff last year, but also 2 teams that are so remarkably different this year, right? Texas has a great argument to be the number 1 team in the country. Meanwhile, Washington, not so much. So I'm watching this and I'm going, you're finally getting something out of Donovan Edwards, but you can't stop somebody all of a sudden. Because outside of Will Johnson, I don't trust nobody in that secondary right now for Michigan. So now that we have seen Michigan take that L a second time, that win that Texas has over them doesn't feel so great either. Okay? It's not shiny anymore. Then you got to take a look at USC. And USC had a 17-10 lead against Minnesota, who was 2-3, right? Not great, but also robbed of a win against Michigan last week. They'd shown what they were able to do. Max Brosman and them were putting it together. I think if they get that onside kick called the right way, they go down, they score, and then we're not talking about Michigan at all this week. But as it is, USC was clinging to Michigan being a good football team because Michigan got to say that our only loss is to perhaps the number 1, number 2 team in the country. And SC's like, if Lincoln knows how to manage the clock, maybe we win that football game. Instead, they lost the football game to an offense that had a quarterback that finished 7 of 12 for 32 yards. So you go to play Minnesota, and that game does not go well for you either. So much so that SC's now got lost to Michigan that looks awful, and a loss to Minnesota that don't look that much good either. Then they got Penn State next week, which brings me around to what I think is going to act like a playoff game for Penn State. It was going to act as a playoff game for USC and Penn State. But because Penn State is undefeated, we're going to treat them as if they're going to make the college football playoff for now. However, you take a loss to this SC team, it ain't going to feel great to be Penn State right now because who's your best win? Illinois is your best win at Penn State. We don't expect Illinois to feature in the college football playoff. So it feels like a play-in game for Penn State. Against UCLA today, Penn State allowed its first sack since week 1. UCLA had allowed 35 points in the first quarter of the first 4 games that they played this year. They allowed 0 for Penn State. What I'm saying is it took Penn State entirely too long to get started in their 27-11 win against UCLA. To which Penn State fans would probably tell you, hey, RJ, we didn't have no Nick Singleton. I don't care. I don't care. You had Katron Allen. You had Tyler Warren. You had Harrison Wallace. You had the Penn State defense. Why are you in a dogfight with a UCLA program that is starting to back up because Ethan Garbers couldn't go? That's not a good look. So now you got an SC team that's got 2 losses that's bad. Both of those losses are bad. You lose that game, we're going to have a really difficult time looking at you and calling you one of the 12 best teams in college football, given what we've seen. However, you've been helped tremendously by the SEC. But you know who you also help? Indiana, Nebraska. I can keep going here. Like Ole Miss, Notre Dame. You lose this game to USC, it's going to be really difficult for us to feel Penn State is good. They're going to have to go beat Ohio State. That would be it. And I don't see them beating Ohio State. Hell, I don't see anybody in the Big Ten beating Ohio State now. Like, we'll get to that. But you also need to know that the Big Ten time zone thing feels real. So right now, this note comes from John Wilner, who does a great job covering the Pac-12. Big Ten teams in conference play traveling 2 or more time zones are 1-7. The only win was Indiana going to UCLA following a Friday home game where they got to play Western Illinois. Turns out Indiana's for real. We'll talk about them and why I think Nebraska's going to need to bring their best game. But that's telling, right? In this first year, teams traveling more than 2 time zones seem to not exactly know what they're getting into, and it's not exactly as ship sure as they would like it to be. And that makes sense to me. I totally understand that. That said, it's still a loss. You know, that's the part. It's still a loss. I watched Rutgers travel to Nebraska today. They lose one, traveling 2 or more time zones in a game that kicked off 97 degrees, which is, I think, the hottest game that they played at Lincoln, in Lincoln, ever at Nebraska this time of year. Just kind of remarkable what's going on there. So I'm looking at USC and Penn State. And while I thought it was going to be Penn State and USC playing, for the opportunity to be that third team perhaps in the Big Ten that gets in the college football playoff, feels like that spot's only available to Penn State. We'll see, because they hope to get Nick Singleton back for that game. But also USC doesn't have Eric Gentry for this one against Minnesota. We'll see if they get him back. I'm just curious about what Lincoln Riley is going to do if they take a third loss before the real halfway mark of the entire season. We're talking about a team that was not good last year and whose defense thought it was going to be good, but it ain't. And now we're also looking at an LSU that desperately needs to win.